So again, I want to welcome you all today to today's webinar. Today's webinar, we're going to go over transitioning either from a self-managed community or from one management company to the next. This is a CE course. So for those community association managers that are looking to get credits, please make sure if you didn't do so in the registration to email me your CAM license, and I'll make sure to put that 1 hour towards your continuing education. So let's start off a little bit about us. My name is Rafael Aquino. I am one of the co-founders and CEO of Affinity Management Services. We've been in the business now since 2007. We manage approximately about 52 associations through Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County, approximately just shy of about 8,500 units, and we have a total of 85 plus employees. Our ideal clients are board members who value partnerships and are looking for solutions with a high level of support. We're able to do that with our team members and the core values that they follow within the organization. We are an organization that empowers our board, our managers, our regional directors, our maintenance and janitorial crews to make about 90% of the decisions that they have to make as long as they're following the core values of the organization. Okay. So let's get into some statistics first. So about the association business in itself, or association management, and in our communities. So based on CAI, a Community Association Institute, in 1970, there were close to about 10,000 community associations across the United States. And in 2000, that number grew exponentially to 222,500 community associations across the United States. And from there, it continues to grow. As of 2018, which is the newest numbers that they have at the moment, there's a total of 345,000 community associations. And you would be amazed to know that out of all those community associations, there's been over 80 million hours of service performed annually by board members and committee members. So it really goes to show not only the board members' tenacity, but also efforts to make sure that they're doing what's right for the community and the residents that live within those communities. So for those board members that are on the call, I do want to applaud you for taking the time out of your day to learn a little bit more of the transition process in itself, as well as how to be able to manage your community associations. So let's hone in a little bit more into Florida, and you'd be amazed that we're one of the largest. Florida has 48,000 community associations throughout the state. And this is always an interesting stat for me because it goes to show the power that we have as community associations. Out of the 13 million voters that Florida has, 9.5 million, 9.4 million of those votes, of those residents actually live within community association. So it really goes to show the power that we have in numbers living within associations. I did notice that we have several communities that registered for today's course that are in Broward, so I decided to highlight Broward's numbers. In Broward, there's 7,200 condo associations and 1,100 homeowners association. And obviously that just continues to grow on both the homeowners and condo, as well as the CAM. We have close to 2,200 CAMs that are licensed in Broward County alone. So again, it goes to show how big our industry is. A lot of times we believe it's small, but when you look at the numbers, it really shows you that we are a pretty big industry and we do have strength in numbers. So let's get to it. I do know some of the registrants that are on the call are actually self-managed properties. And I wanted to go over a little bit of the transition as well as advantages and disadvantages of being managed, self-managing as well as professionally managed. So I'll start there. So there's obviously some advantages of being self-managed. There's the option of, affordability of not having any management fees, which, I can kind of argue another side, but there's also the association business part. The board does kind of have full control of the association's business, where they're the ones hiring staff and going through that entire process. While I do see that as a disadvantage because of the time, but I'll go over that a little bit later. Also having the direct relationships when it comes to contracts and the vendors. So having those direct relationships with the accounting firm, with the attorneys and landscapers and so forth, some board members do see the advantage of that. Some of the disadvantages of being self-managed is really the lack of support. And believe it or not, in the Florida alone, close to about 50%, the number is coming down, are self-managed. However, this past year alone, especially with COVID, we've seen an increase of self-managed properties going professionally managed. Number one reason outside of COVID itself and needing that support, it's also the other support that gets provided by management company, where you have somebody to chime in and be able to obtain additional information, and also be able to benchmark certain decisions that you'd like to make based on other associations and how they're managing it. Also, the hiring and staff. I know I put that as an advantage, but I do see that as a disadvantage, because if you have a loss of a team member, it's going to be very difficult to be able to either restaff or be able to have to put up ads and dealing with vacation and individuals being out. The rule enforcement and violations, very challenging to deal in self-managed properties because you don't have anyone in the middle that can assist. You end up being the enforcer, so that causes some issues because you're obviously dealing with your neighbors and so forth. And many times in certain self-managed properties, you also have not enough volunteers to be able to assist you. Most self-managed properties, the boards are either retired and they have the time to be able to put that effort. The other item that we also see a lot with self-managed properties, especially the ones that we've taken on, is there's a huge lack of technology. And you'd be amazed when we're bidding on self-managed properties, where a lot of times they're very concerned with regards to the cost of, well, you're going to cost me a lot of money to manage my association compared to what I'm paying. And what we've realized over the years, it's that in many instances, we're actually either able to come in at the same number or even be able to save them some money. And that happens mainly because of the lack of technology. So as an example, we recently took on about a 350 unit condo in Fort Lauderdale area. And they were doing things, in the old ways, still signing checks, still having someone doing the financials inside of the office. And we were able to eliminate a position, as well as be able to bring in these technologies that allowed for the manager to really focus on the bigger picture for the association. Capital project improvement oversight, again, not being able to have someone on staff or someone within the self-managed community that has some expertise that can at least provide some proper guidance, and more importantly, be able to bring in the professionals based on, when a management company deals with multiple engineers, multiple attorneys, they have, a list or a Rolodex of individuals that they can refer. And depending on the size of your community, they can refer vendors that would meet, the needs of your particular community. Okay, the next one, we're going to talk a little bit about advantages and disadvantages of being professionally managed. So there are obviously advantages. I went over some of them, which is the administrative and on-site support. There's also the accounting services. In most instances, I would say a high probability, most management companies are going to handle your accounting services. And depending on what management company you're working with, I know if I can speak for us that we have a CPA on staff. So someone that's very well, has a very well understanding of GAAP compliance, be able to manage your books in a way that they're properly presented, and also be able to provide those high-level reports to your boards to provide you a better understanding of what those financial statements or what's within those financial statements. When it comes to technology, as I stated earlier, there's many benefits that you're going to get from being professionally managed. Obviously, for those of you that don't know, if your association is a condo and it's over 150 units, the statute did change about 2 years ago, I believe, or 3 years ago, that requires you to have a website. If you're an HOA, you should. I recommend you follow the similar guidelines. So there's advantages because, while a self-managed property can go out and get their own website, again, it becomes a little bit clunky because you don't have the integrations with all the other items that deal with the association. For instance, estoppels, for instance, applications, linking with the accounting, linking with the accounts receivable. So when you work with a good property management company, they'll be able to make sure that's a one-stop shop for you. I won't go over every single one, but I do want to touch on some of the highlight ones that I see with the self-managed. Especially as the payments. You'd be amazed how many self-managed properties don't even offer online payments or even offer how to pay via ACH, so automatic debit. For us, that's been a major breakthrough for those associations that we've taken on that are self-managed. Our portfolio, close to 65% of our homeowners are on ACH. That doesn't just magically happen. There's a lot of work that goes behind the scenes by my team. However, we want to promote that. You're a nonprofit organization. You basically are living in one way or another. You don't have excess profits. So you need to make sure that you're maintaining proper funds. The only way of doing that is making sure that you're receiving your monies when they need to be received. Further is the enforcement of the rules. As I stated earlier, having a middle person handling those affairs for the association makes it a little bit easier on the board members. You're not having to deal with residents receiving a letter from you or with your name on it. It can come, from the managing company directly, and just, there's that middle person that's going to assist throughout that process. And lastly is the cost savings. Again, I know many times self-managed properties believe that management companies are too expensive, but you do have to keep in mind that there's many cost savings with regards to technology, as I stated earlier, as well as being able to show you how you can generate better prices on your contracts, because as a management company, we have leverage. We have other clients that we serve, and vendors are traditionally going to be able to work a little bit better with us since they know we have the volume and we can refer them additional business. Further, it's also us being able to come in and assess and seeing, is there a way that we can do some work in-house? So as an example, we've had associations where we've recommended, let's bring in a high-level maintenance person, not maybe a chief engineer, depending on the building, but a higher level maintenance person so we can do some of the work in-house. And in some instances, we've been able to save $20,000, $30,000 because a lot of the work, what they were doing is they were just subcontracting the work out. So there are many advantages that you could get. While some board members, with regards to the bid disadvantage, some board members say, well, the cost. But ultimately, there's also the liability portion that you must keep in mind. When you're self-managed, you're running the payroll through your association. You're basically managing that employee. When you bring in a professional management company, you're going to have that company most of the time is going to absorb the janitorial and maintenance, certain crew members, and that liability now belongs onto the property management company, and we're the ones that are going to give the proper training and so forth to go throughout that process. Okay. So let's talk about change. So for those associations that are either self-managed or professionally managed, these are the common questions or the common concerns, I guess I should say, that we get when board members want to make a change. And a lot of times we understand that it's a big decision. So in today's webinar, I'm going to do my best to try to coach you on what's the right way, or at least have a guideline or some principles that you should be following so that the change doesn't become something that you'll regret in the future. It is a process and you should have timelines in place. I professionally recommend that, if you have to at least have a start date, right? If you don't have a goal in mind and you don't have that goal written, the chances of you accomplishing that goal are very slim. So you should already have some estimate date of when this needs to occur. So for instance, we're in the middle of December. I already know with most accounts, we're probably not going to start if we haven't spoken at all, at least till February or March. Don't get me wrong, I've had accounts where I've had to start with 2-week notice. But if you want to avoid hiccups and you want to avoid challenges throughout the transition process, I strongly urge you to take your time in doing this and assessing what your real needs are. So some of the hesitations that we get is we know what we want but we're scared to make the change. We have a project going on and we don't think the timing is right. Timing is never right, by the way. Will it cost us more? And what are we actually paying? What are we actually currently paying for? Also, this one happens a lot is we have a good relationship with the employees, but the management company is not performing. Same thing happens in self-managed properties. We really get along with David. However, we're not happy with his performance. And then lastly is the transition process in itself. Many board members are scared to make a change because of the transitioning of information. What I will tell you is about 90% of the management companies in our industry, while we've transitioned from different companies, do handle themselves in a very professional manner. You are going to have, those outliers that don't. However, there are things within statute that protect you, and any professional company is going to guide you and walk you through that process, or hopefully they should. So I have an interesting quote here by Zig Ziglar that I wanted to point out. And it says, the first step to getting what you want is to have the courage to get rid of what you don't want. So that's very important that you keep that in mind, and you know what it is that you don't want, so that when you're making that change, you're looking for what it is that you as a board of directors really need to take you either to the next level or to really get things in line to what you need as a board of directors. So as you're going through your selection process, I put here this little cartoon because I think, I'm hoping it'll reveal to you how important it is for you to be open and honest with whoever it is that you're interviewing or you're meeting with when you're going through this transition process of changing management companies or hiring a management company. So the most important thing is not every company is a perfect fit for every association. So I know that that's a philosophy within our business. We know that there's certain accounts that we're just not going to work well with. And in order for us to determine that, we need to really listen, and we need to be there and ask a lot of questions. So whenever you're interviewing a company, they should be asking a lot of questions. They should be trying to understand what your needs are, to see if they can fulfill those needs. If they're not really probing and understanding, that should be a red flag, because not everyone's a perfect fit for everyone. We know what accounts we work very well with. And as I showed you earlier, it's accounts where board members are really looking for a partnership and looking for the management company to really provide that high level of support. And not every company is designed that way. So you as a board member, you need to understand, and you need to be able to reveal what the real challenges are. And I say what the real challenges are not just, oh, I don't like this person. No, these are the specifics. We're having an issue with our 40-year recertification. It hasn't been accomplished because of X, Y, Z. We're not happy with the staff. What is the particular issues that you're not happy with the staff? They're not showing up on time. They're not trained properly, and so forth. And by, someone that's meeting with you, if they're asking the right questions, then we can say, okay, look, these are the solutions we can provide for you based on those needs. And then that's what's going to help you determine if that's the right organization for you or not. Again, there's a lot of great organizations, a lot of great professional management companies out there, but they're not all the one size doesn't fit all. So you as a board need to understand what it is. Lastly, it's also important. We get a lot of pushback when we ask for budgets and we ask for financial statements. I want to kind of be upfront and explain why we're asking for this information. Many times board members believe, well, I want to know what your number is first. And I get that, I get that that's a common practice when you're negotiating. But when what we're facing in the association world is, number one, you're a nonprofit. So we know we need to work within a budget. Disclosing what your budget is not going to do you any harm. It may actually avoid you wasting time. For instance, we'll get associations that'll tell us, well, we want to get a CAM manager for $38,000 a year. That's impossible. I mean, it's a very, very difficult task to do. So we may just, instead of wasting each other's time, we may say, listen, if that's your budget, we don't believe we're the right organization for you, and we're going to need to move on. And you didn't waste any time. We didn't waste any time. So it's important that you disclose that or have that information ready. Further, I know we take a good look at your financials to see where you're standing with reserves, to see where you're standing with your operating account. If during our first discovery call or our first meeting, you're telling me that we need to finish XYZ projects, and I look at your financial statements, I look that you don't have a loan, I look that you don't have at least 2 months of operating expenses, I look and see that you don't have reserves, are we really going to be able to accomplish that goal if there's no money? That's where I'm going to ask you then the next question. Are we prepared to do a loan? Are we prepared to do a special assessment? Or how are we going to finish? How are we going to be able to accomplish this goal that you stated was so important without having the funds? So again, it's very important that you take the time to really listen to whoever it is that you're interviewing, so that there's a common understanding between the two of you. Because if there isn't, then you're going to have a high probability that that relationship is going to have its challenges, whether it's now or whether it's a couple months down the road. And it's just not worth making a change if you're not sure that you're on the common ground with whoever it is that you're selecting. Okay. So the transition process in itself, in today's webinar, again, I could speak for the transition for almost 3 hours. For us, it's really the foundation of the work that we need to do. You know, before you build a home, you know, you need to build its foundation, and it must be solid so that it can last over the years. And we see it in the same exact fashion. So we are very thorough in our transition process. So today I'm just going to kind of give you high level tips so that hopefully you can take it away with you and then be able to make a better decision when you're going through your selection process. So as I stated in the previous slide, you know, list your challenges. And again, try to keep it try to dig. I like to tell my team members to try to dig and see what the root of the problem really is. You know, if it's someone not answering, you know, the phone, you know, then that's a concern. Okay, the management company doesn't answer the phone. Concern may be there's no training. Another common concern that we get is the regional director doesn't pass by our property. Last time he or she was here was 3 months ago. So list those concerns again, so that you can identify if who you're interviewing can meet those demands or those challenges that you currently have. This one sounds really basic, but you'd be amazed. In the past, I want to say 3 years, I've made the suggestion, or Ashley, our business development manager, has made the suggestion of, have you had your management contract reviewed? And the first question is, yes, we have. And we sign our agreement, and later, behold that they never had their contract reviewed and they have another year left. So it sounds basic, and I do urge you to have your attorney review it. Unless it has language that says with or without cause, that's pretty black and white that you can cancel it. You know, we're always going to urge you to have your attorney review it so that they can provide their opinion and tell you, okay, these are the terms, this is what you're looking at, this is the process that you need to go through to cancel it. Okay. Next is your RFP. So again, don't get overwhelmed by the term, you know, request for proposal. For those that don't know, don't get overwhelmed by that. You're a board member, you're a volunteer, you're not being paid for this. But you know, something basic, even if it's 10 to 20 questions of what you want your managing company to answer. So you're going to have, as I stated earlier, a list of challenges. And then you should have at least questions based on some of those challenges or all of them. And then based on where you're looking to go as a community. You know, every community is different. Certain communities had one management company for 10 years and they were good for those 10 years. But now the new board says, I'm ready to take this to the next level. So they're going to look for a next level company, maybe like Affinity or another competitor. And that's what they're going to look for. So you want to understand what your needs are. Again, just having a series of questions. Also, that's going to help you in your comparison. So what did company A say? What did company B say? What did company C say on those same questions? I know as board members, most of the times you're only focused on dollars and cents, but you have to understand that it's not just dollars and cents. You're carrying a load and you have a fiduciary responsibility to the residents to uphold the property values, okay? And uphold what needs to be done based on your association's documents. So it shouldn't boil down to strictly dollars and cents. There needs to be value brought by the management company, and that value needs to align with what you're looking for as a board of directors. If it doesn't, but the numbers do align, you're just going to find yourself in the same position, or in some cases, maybe in a worse position. Further, you know, if you have to increase the fees a little bit to make a change, to really bring in a professional company, you have to look at yourself and say, okay, what is this impact? How does this impact? In a way, you have to be a little bit selfish. And I know this may not sound right to everyone, but you're the volunteer. You're the one doing all the work. So if no one's volunteering for this work, then, and you need that support from a professional company, then maybe that's a tough decision that you need to make. And those are decisions that you need to make because it's going to progress your association in a direction that it needs to go. You know, we've become experts we have a gamut of properties, but we've become experts in especially those medium, and I say medium, 150 unit condos to about those 350 unit condos. And I'm going to speak to more of those of the 100, because those are the associations that suffer a bit, because they have smaller budgets because of the amount of units, right? But normally properties of that size, at 100 units, you're already requiring an on-site manager. If you're not, then the board is the one doing all the heavy lifting. So these are questions that you need to ask yourself. At the end of the day, the building that you're in is going to continue to age. As a building continues to age, it's going to need more maintenance. It's going to need more things to be done to it. It's going to need more service from the residents because things are breaking. So it makes sense to plan properly now and then set yourself up so that you're in a better position as the building continues to age. Next is the interviews. So, if I were to tell you how many times I get calls and it's like, oh, what's your price per unit? I'd be rich, and maybe I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. That just doesn't work, at least for us. And I hope it doesn't work for a lot of my competitors. There isn't a price per unit, at least for us. Yes, can we give you one? Of course. But we're going to price your property based on your needs and your demands. And I hope whoever you're interviewing is going to as well. Not every association is the same. You're having a business. Remember, an association is a corporation. Myself and maybe my direct competitors, we're not going to be the same. We're not going to manage our businesses the same, and we're not probably going to charge the same. So there's no way you can expect to say, okay, I want to pay $10 per unit, and that's what it is. No, we have to see what your challenges are. How much resources do we need to apply to that association to get to the objectives and the goals that you have? So if you're calling a professional company and you're just asking for a number, you're most likely going to either turn off and show the company immediately that really what your goal is just, you're just price conscious, which as a board, that's not your responsibility. If you read your documents, nowhere does it say there, you need to make sure that you get the bottom price, okay? With regards to the interviews, again, many times, and I understand and I can empathize and I can appreciate why you want to kind of get it done immediately, but take your time with the process. Again, you should be going on a minimum of 2 interviews. I'll give you an example. I'm working right now with an account in the Miami Beach area, and we've been in talks for almost a year. And finally, it's starting to come together. So this board had a process already in mind. They needed to get their board members aligned. And at the moment, they're actually going through a very thorough process. They've interviewed us. They've interviewed our transition manager, and they've even done a demo of the systems that we had promised that we would provide. So if you want to get this right, just stage it. Again, don't get overwhelmed. Don't say, I'm not going to change my management company because this is just too much work. Just stage it. If you put it down, this is a 3-month or a 2-month plan. We'll pre-schedule the meetings with my board. You'll be able to get through this. And then once you make your decision, you're going to feel much more comfortable that you've made the right decision, or you got as close as possible to that decision. So once you make the decision on the company and you've gone through your process, you're going to want to make sure that you give yourself ample time to have your attorney review the agreement. Okay. So your attorney as well works with other associations, so you can't expect them to turn around the contract within a day or 2. My experience has shown that the attorneys are normally turning around the contracts within about a week, 4 to 5 days. But in some cases, it has gone as much as 2 weeks. So just give yourself ample time. There may be some negotiation within the agreement. So you have to give both the management company and your attorney time to be able to negotiate those terms with you so that, again, you're protected as an association. A very important tip, okay? Actually, I'm going to give you 2. Number 1 is make sure whoever you're signing on with that you have with or without clause for cancellation. So for instance, for us, it's very common practice that we do 60 days with or without cause to be able to cancel the agreement. The reason why you want that is, number 1, if someone's providing their service and they're confident in their service, they're not going to have a concern doing that. You don't want to go too much less than that. I do know some direct competitors do 30 days. The reason why I say don't do the 30 days is, remember, either party can cancel with or without cause for 30 days. So if the management company gives you 30 days, you're kind of blindsided. you're going to have a tough time finding a company within 30 days. Can you? Yes, but it may not be the company that you want to work with. So I always recommend 60 days gives both parties ample time to transition either in or out in the proper way. And then the second tip is you don't need to interview 7, 8, 9, 10 companies. Technically, we fall within the professional management services of the statute. So you're not even required to get more than one management proposal. It's not what I'm recommending, but just giving you a tip. However, just keep it to 3. The more you have, the more confusion you're going to have. Just call your references, you can call your attorney, get some requests of companies, get an understanding of what company is the right fit for you. Again, there's very large management companies within our industry, just like there are very small. So you need to at least get an idea, okay, are we more of a small, medium, or large company? Do we want a mom and pop? Do we want a medium-sized organization like Affinity that can provide you all the resources that the larger companies have? Or do we want more of a corporate, dealing with a ton of red tape kind of organization? So that's your decision as a board that you need to review and formulate, okay, these are the companies that we're looking for, and then you can start, hunting for them. Okay. So very important, very, very important. Any company that you're interviewing, you want to make sure that they have some kind of roadmap to the transition. So this is our actual roadmap here, kind of high level. I don't have the time to be able to go into everything in detail, but you want to make sure that they have some kind of roadmap. Further, depending on the company that you're interviewing with, you're going to want to know, do they have a transition team? I would recommend maybe potentially meeting that person or individuals that's going to be focused on transitioning your property, because this is what's going to determine the success of the transition. Okay. And in the transition process itself, there is a lot of things that go on. So I'll give you an example. We use a project management tool by Microsoft to be able to manage our transitions so that, there's nothing being missed. If I told you all the points, it's over 500 points when I encompass it, but high level, it's about 200 points that we're going through to make sure that we're obtaining all the proper information as well as loading all the proper information into the systems. Okay. So once the transition process has started, again, every company does it slightly different for those that actually do have transition teams. And I'm going to focus more on if you have a team, if you're hiring a company that has a team, and I can give you a little bit of what we're doing throughout this process. Most of the lifting will be done by the management company, but as a board, you do need to understand that you're gonna need to provide some assistance because depending on the management company, they may provide everything or not. Most do, but there are certain intimate questions that will need to be answered by the board and not the current management company. So in the next slides, I'm going to speak to a little bit as towards how we do our process. Again, you need to interview whoever you're interviewing on what steps they go through. So we like to host what we call a kickoff meeting. And once we're hired, we host a kickoff meeting. And in that kickoff meeting, it's basically the introduction between business development, the transition team, as well as the regional director that we would assign to your property. So that way everyone's already getting to meet. In the midst of COVID, most of our presentation meetings have been a webinar. So in this case, we're either meeting in person, depending on the board's comfort level, or we're doing it over webinar. And during this time, we're intaking all the current and historical documents. We do have pre-templated forms of information that we're going to be requesting from your current management company, or if you're self-managed, from your current on-site team. We're going through the unit owner history. In most cases, there will be banking change. That occurs because of depending on the software that the company works with. There's integrations that work directly with the software. So that's why a lot of times you'll see some banking change, at least on the operating account. We're also discussing employees for those associations that have employees. And when I say employee reviews, kind of get an understanding of, again, based on what we had on a wish list or the items that we discussed in our signing of the contract, we'll start kind of going over what the association is looking for with regards to the employees and so forth. One important point that we're going through over as well in the kickoff meeting is going over any capital projects that you may be going through. So if you're going through a 50-year, 40-year, if you're going through a seawall change, or if you're just going through something as simple as repaving the parking spaces. We're going to go over that, see where those projects are at. I think I've said it a couple times. You shouldn't hesitate to change management companies because you have a project going on. If you have a very strong vendor, again, higher probability the management company has some kind of relationship with the vendor. If they don't, and you're working with a strong vendor, the vendor is going to have their reports, and we'll kind of come in and get a strong understanding of what's going on, and then we'll take it from there. Perfect example is we're just taking on right now an association, 140 units in Aventura area. And, they were hesitant to make the change because they had a water leak, a major water leak going on in the property. They told us that throughout the interview process. We've had our regional already working on it without our start date even working. Again, that's where, again, we provide that high touch. That's what we look for. That's what clients look for in us. And we're already kind of determining where that water leak is going. So we showed immediately out of the gate the value that we're there to bring to the client. So don't hesitate to make a decision because of a project. The worst thing you want is a project to fall apart and then you'll have to deal with it anyway. Throughout the kickoff meeting, we're also getting an understanding if there's any pending legal matters going on, what needs to be done, what steps have been taken. And then lastly, going over the board wish list. Based on what we heard during the sales process, we're going to go through that. The business development should turn that over to our transition team and say, look, these are what the wishes of the board. At that time, we're going to go over those wishes and then start planning, okay, which are the ones that are going to be priority and which are the ones that we're going to focus on, so that we could start setting timelines on those wish list items so that the expectations are clear between both parties. Throughout pre-takeover as well, we're going through your financials, intaking that information, your budgets, financial statements. Again, one of the advantages with us, being a medium-sized organization, we do have an on-site, an in-staff, our director of association accounting is a CPA. So he's going to go in there and review your financials, and I'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide. Next, we're going to go into what's very important is vendor compliance. So what vendor compliance is, making sure that, everyone has the proper license and insurance. We're building a contract sheet for you that's going to tell you when your contracts expire, when they automatically renew. We do use some automation there where your managers get emails automatically letting them know this contract's coming up for expiration and so forth. And you'll be receiving that in your reports and your manager's reports as well. Excuse me. Also, we're with regards to compliance, making sure that, the contractors have the proper license and insurance. You'd be surprised, especially with self-managed properties or, other associations where they're working with the landscaper that doesn't even have workers' comp. So these are major liability issues that, the association was fortunate enough to get away with it over the years. But moving forward, you need to have a very close eye on those items. Pre-takeover, we're going through an in-depth property inspection, kind of identifying, taking pictures. Our biggest concern is to identify immediately any safety concerns for HOAs, raised sidewalks, for condos, let's say that have brick pavers in the entrance area. But we're kind of taking pictures, seeing what we're seeing before we start. So we take a lot of pictures of the office, storage rooms, maintenance closets, so that as we gradually can improve the property, we can show that value to the board member as well as the residents of what we've done to enhance the property. Next step is IT review and setup. So I'm going to spend a little time here because I'm actually thinking of doing a webinar just strictly on this. And you'd be amazed how many on-site properties we take on. This year, I think we've taken on about 6 or 7. And almost every single one had to do a complete IT upgrade. And reason being is they had computers that were just not up to the times. They had Windows 7 that no longer is being used and is no longer being supported by Microsoft. Sometimes boards are sticker shocked because of the improvement, but it must be done. Further, as I'm sure everyone's been either reading or hearing on the news, is cybersecurity, okay? It's very important. If you're working with a professional company, they're going to most likely, or very high probability, or they should recommend a firewall. Management companies are carrying very sensitive information, just as the associations are. And remember that that equipment remains or should be yours. So if there's ever a change, that equipment doesn't go anywhere. That equipment stays as yours. But cybersecurity is very, very important, especially in today's day and age. So one of the things that we do is we do have a company come in, complete outside independent company, and does an assessment of the association's current IT infrastructure, and then they'll make recommendations at that time. But again, it's very important that you're keeping this top of mind. It's a topic that it's just starting to being talked about in our industry, but I'm confident that over the next couple of years, you're going to see that it's going to be a much larger topic. I mean, cybersecurity is a big concern. And with associations, all the data that is being dealt with, applications and so forth, it's very important that you're securing your equipment at the property properly. And lastly, prior to takeover, we're obviously communicating with your residents. I'm surprised how many times I get asked with regards to, okay, so when do the residents get letters? And so in ideal circumstance, we'll send letters 15 days before we start. We don't send it any earlier because we don't want to confuse the residents of where that payment for the month before we start goes. So we want them to send that to the current company so your cash flows are in a good position. So normally 15 days before we start, we're sending a communication letting them know that we're the new management company. They'll get a little packet explaining how to make payments, how to set up online, where the new payment address is, if you're an on-site property, who your on-site manager is going to be, who your regional director is going to be, the new contact information, if you're doing websites, where the websites are going to be set up, and so forth. Okay. And then once we get started with our actual onboarding, we're already in our first week there. We're ensuring make sure that whoever we're putting on site is properly trained, has the proper uniforms. Every association manages the uniform situation slightly different. One of the things that we're sticklers for is, the way the teams are dressed. Again, the employees are a reflection of not only Affinity, but also of your association. So it's important that, for maintenance crews, they have their shirts tucked in or their polos properly tucked in. They're all in either same uniform, either branded with Affinity or branded with the association. We give the choice to the client. And more importantly is also trained. How are they saying the hellos and goodbyes to the residents? Or do they know what their checklists are for the day? What are they doing when it comes to maintenance and janitorial and so forth? Membership communication continues even on that first day. We want to send an email, at least letting the membership know, reminding them that we're the new management company, who is managing the property. In most cases for our on-site properties, we do something very nice. We'll send a picture. It'll have a picture of every employee with their name, so they can kind of, reference that person and so forth. Also, one of the things that we are sticklers for is also making sure that we do a full file audit of all the information that gets turned over. Most of the times they are hard copy. We wish they were digital, but most of the times they're not. So we're basically doing a strong audit of what we received. And then that way we provide that information to the board and letting look, these are the items that we did receive. These are the items that we didn't receive. So if there's any requests in the future for something, there's that audit trail of what occurred. Also, during that first week, the manager or the regional are working closely to meeting all the third-party vendors. Outside of making sure they're in compliance, it's also, having, setting expectations of what we're expecting of them based on the way we conduct business. One of the biggest advantages that a change allows board members is the resetting of relationships, okay? Again, especially with vendors. We're definitely not an organization to come in and wipe out your vendors. We believe very much in loyalty. So if the vendor's been good to you over the years, but they've gotten a little bit lazy, just so they've gotten complacent, then this is an opportunity to reset the relationship and reset the expectations. So, we're going to come in, treat them very professional. That's just the way we are. It's one of our core values. And just let them know, listen, this is the way we want things conducted. This is what we're expecting of you. Review their contracts. This is what your contract states. This is how we want things done. And that way we start forging hopefully a strong relationship with them at that time. Also, one thing that we do is once we get started, we work with maintenance crew and we start identifying what we call as your assets. Okay, so your assets are your pieces of equipment within the property. And we do that so that we can tie all the work orders to those pieces of equipment. So that way we can give you kind of high level reports, letting you know, okay, look, this piece of equipment has broken down 10 times. I think it's time for us to replace it rather than just making the assumption that it needs to be replaced. And of course, during this time, we're also reviewing and executing any safety procedures or protocols that you may have. Excuse me. That you may have, and also making sure that maintenance, janitorial, and everyone is on par with the safety protocols. Okay. Next, we'll go over kind of post-transition. There are items that are handled after we start. And I apologize, I didn't say it earlier. Transition process in an ideal circumstance, our contract would be signed maybe 45 days. When it's great, it's 60 days before we start. Most of the times they're signed 45 days to 30 days before we start. Then from there, we start, and the transition process takes probably about another 60 to 70 days for us to complete the transition process. A lot of it's dependent on the information, I should say, when we receive the information. But normally we can complete a transition between 100 to just shy of about 120 days. So once the transition, again, after the process, after we've already started, we're still doing some items, but what we're focused on at this time is really high touches. Again, I'm speaking for us. The accessibility is what we sell a lot. It's, having access to our regional directors, the owners of the company, and then you'll start your weekly managers report as well. One of the things that's very important, especially through your interview process, is asking how many times your regional director is going to be at the property, and also if the company keeps metrics on that, because we do. Throughout that time, again, we're board and residential communication, phone calls, emails, website chat. There's different things that are going to be provided based on your association. So I have a question with regards to estoppels here that I see that was asked. So at this time, we're setting up all the estoppels, which are done online. And the estoppels, at least for Affinity, they're done online. So there will either be a link on the association's website, if you have a website, or the new owner or buyer would go to our website and they'll be able to purchase that. We're very much into technology. Again, our core is to be able to have our managers focus on the high level things and not have your managers or assistants being focused on admin kind of work. We try to provide that back office support for your on-site team. And we do that through technology. So through your websites, you'll be able to do architectural modifications online. You'll be able to do your rental application or your sale applications online, do your estoppels online. Again, the way we see it is every interruption your office staff has, there's Harvard studies that have shown that for every interruption, any minute or 5-minute interruption, you're losing close to an hour or two of productivity because that person needs to go ahead and refocus. So it's very important that if we can, we'll do it online. So some of the pushback that we'll get from some of the older communities, because we do manage 55 and older community as well, our residents don't have computers. Our residents will never adapt to that. So, the simple request I have, and I love doing it when it's a room either full of residents or full of board members, I ask you, how many people have Facebook? And if you can use Facebook, the way I like to say it, if you could use Facebook, you could use any of the systems that we provide. An important thing to also write down when you're interviewing is, are you going to be trained as a board on these systems? So we have a dedicated person that will train you on these systems and show you how to be able to use it as a board. After is also checks and balances. So from a back office, it's important that what are the checks and balances that the company has. So this is also known as metrics or KPIs. How are they grading their team members? Okay, so you want to either see that either visually or you want to understand how the company does that. So for instance, here, we are every 2 months, we're doing a review for our managers and assistant managers and so forth. And we're going through that and just checking in, what are they grading? What are they scoring? So that we know if there's going to be any challenges, and being proactive, if there's any challenges that are coming with that employee, or also having the communication with the board saying, hey, look, they're performing very well. What's your intake? Well, the manager is doing an amazing job from a corporate perspective, but we want your input. And the board may say, well, we don't like the way he's speaking to the residents. So that's something that we need to either coach that individual or talk to them about them, that they need to correct that. So you want to make sure that you have that two-way communication with whatever company you're hiring. And this is something that obviously you're not dealing directly with the manager, you're dealing more with the back office, with either the regional director, or depending on the company, the owner of the company, or vice president, whoever it may be. You want to make sure that you have that access and you get that kind of information, or you have that feedback loop, so that you know where you're standing with your team members and employees. Also, some of the things that we do from a back office support is, customized reporting. Again, we do our best to try to cater to the needs of our clients. So we do customized treasury reports. What that is, it gives you a high level report of what's going on with your financial statements. We can appreciate that many board members don't have an accounting degree or don't know how to read a financial statement. So we do our best to be able to let you know, okay, this is a high level report. That'll tell you what came in, what went out for the month, your cash movement, your cash disbursements, your reserve changes, and so forth. And that way you get a glimpse, a snapshot, I should say, of those financial statements, and you can confirm that information within the reports. Again, these are just, I won't go into every single one, but you just want to see what kind of reports you're going to get from whoever you decide to hire. More importantly, is not just them verbalizing what report they're going to get, is you want to see, maybe if possible, a sample of that report, so that you can say, okay, look, this looks great. This is exactly what we've been needing, and exactly what our association needs to move in the right direction. Okay. Next, sorry here. Okay. So so basically that wraps up the transition process in itself. I'm going to take a moment here and go over some of the questions that we have to see if we can answer see if I can answer any of these questions. Okay, give me 1 second. I have a question here. What's the smallest number of units that we manage? That really depends. I hate to give you an attorney response, but that really depends. Feel free to contact us. I'll provide my contact information in the next 2 slides, and I'll be able to give you some information. With regards to what is the statute number for protection of association and transitions. So that I'm aware of, again, I'm not an attorney, that I'm aware of, there isn't a statute per se with regards to transition. Where the statute's going to protect you is that the information is the association's, and it must be turned over. So you're going to follow either the 5 or 10 days, depending on the information that you're requesting from the current management company. So this is a great, Martina, this is a great question. Because when we do get those associations where we have challenges in obtaining the information from the management company, one of the first tools that we have the association sign when we're doing our kickoff meeting is a records request letter. So, when we're dealing with a professional company, they're going to hand over the information right. I'm not going to say, like as I stated, about 90% of the companies provide the information. But when we have those challenges, again, it's either we're going to work with your attorney, or we're going to use the records request, or a combination of both to be able to use the two. To be able to use those 2 avenues to be able to obtain that information. So I have a question here from Sheriff. We have a cancellation with cause. Want to get out? Missing financial records. Is that enough to get out? So this is the problem when you have those contracts that are not with or without cause. So normally those contracts have what's called a cure period, okay? And then what it'll state is that you can cancel it if we don't do something. But that's something, you need to send them a letter, and then they have 30 days to cure it. And then if they don't cure it, then you can get out. But the reality of the situation is that it's not that simple, because you'd have to prove that. And then if your contract doesn't delineate the specifics of when the financials are due, or at what time or time frame they're due, they can take the position, well, I provided it to you, so we're in the clear. So that's, that's the problem with those contracts with the cure period. While I can appreciate them, because listen, there's nothing worse. It's happened to us. There's nothing worse than having your contract canceled because of a change of a board. And that's why you have those kind of agreements with a cure period. So I can appreciate them. However, it's very challenging. So one thing you're going to want to look at, Sheriff, is number one, when does your contract, what's the automatic renewal? Because most likely it has one. And what's the notice that you need to provide to cancel that agreement? So some agreements will tell you need to have 90-day notice before it renews. So it's important that you know those dates so that you could put yourself in a position to either get it out to bid or make the change that you need to make. Okay. Robin asked here is, what is COI? So that had to do with the compliance. The COI, certificate of insurance, is what that means. And what the certificate of insurance is going to do, it's going to identify what kind of insurances that particular vendor has, what kind of limits, what are the expiration dates, and who's the company that's providing it. Okay, let me see here if there's any other further questions. So Lou asked here, technology savvy residents versus non-technology savvy residents. I think I may have answered that. Again, we do our best for those there are residents that just don't have a computer and they just don't have a smartphone. In those instances, we are in the service industry. So we're going to need to be able to service them. But again, I'm all about numbers. My engineering background always makes me lean that way. And as I showed you guys earlier, we manage about 8,500 units. And if we process I think it's no more than 10 applications, 10 applications a year manually. So most of the times, a realtor is dealing with that, and they'll be able to assist those individuals that can't. But for those that can't, we do have to be able to provide them an option to be able to do it in some other way. Have many regional managers and dedicated transition employees does Affinity have? So, okay, this is a specific question to us. So right now we currently have 2 regional managers and we have 2 individuals on the transition team that are focused on that. So our regional managers, important thing to ask as well is, how many managers do your regional managers manage? Our regional managers are very low in comparison to what the benchmark is with our competitors. And we do that strategically. Obviously, it costs us more, but we do that strategically in order to be able to provide a high level of service to our clients. I do see here that we have other questions, but they're more related with regards to my organization. I'd rather focus on questions that are specific to kind of general. So for those that have questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be glad to answer questions specific to Affinity offline, so that for those residents that are kind of here to get to understand the transition process, they get a good understanding of that. So next, what I kindly ask, we do our best. We're not the best, but we do our best to provide education and tips for board members and provide additional knowledge. So for those of you that do have a phone, I kindly ask if you could pull up your phone and open up your camera and you can put your camera over what's called here a QR code, and it'll send you to our YouTube page. Take some time, check out our YouTube page. I have a video coming out every single Tuesday. It's either a client testimonial, it's either a webinar such as this one that we'll post on the YouTube page, and it's also tips. We do know over the years, everyone's attention span has gone away. So we do try to keep our tip videos to less than a minute or 2 minutes. So I kindly ask if you just take a moment to just put your phone over that QR code with the camera open and then just click on the link. It'll send you to our YouTube page. Make sure to hit subscribe and also click the alert button, and it'll alert you when we have new videos. But we do have videos coming out every Tuesday. Okay. So for those of you that had the questions specific to Affinity, I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Here you'll find, excuse me, our telephone number, or office number, as well as my direct email number. If you don't have a time to write it down right now, feel free to email us at info@ManagedByAffinity, and we'll get back to you. Okay. So I do want to thank you all again for attending today's webinar. I hope you were able to get some takeaways from today's webinar to help you in the decision-making process. I know it can seem daunting and challenging. However, it's important that if you're not happy and things are not moving in the direction that you have them move, that you make the change, because ultimately who's going to carry that weight is going to be you and no one else. It's going to just be you and your board members. So again, any questions, any suggestions with regards to the presentation in itself, they're more than welcomed. I hope you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and hope you all have a great day and a beautiful holiday. Thank you. Bye-bye.